Cricinfo the lineup. As a special year-end show, we're doing the most surprising events of 2024. Some might say it's a surprise that this show even still exists. But we already have a candidate for number one most surprising event of 2024, which is we have the editor-in-chief, Mr. Sambit Bal, on the show. That's the biggest surprise of 2024. Usually Sambit is watching the recording from behind the cameras.
And trolling.
Waving his arms in protestation. He sometimes live changes our appraisal notes depending on our opinions.
Yeah, some of you are in trouble because those of you who wanted no Lakshman in the BGT 11.
Oh yeah. Sambit has come onto the show to prevent opinions like that this time. So anyway, this has been a year of huge surprises. I've got George and Yash who've been up since 5 a.m. in the morning. We're recording this, by the way, on day 4 of the Gabba test. So yeah, a year of huge surprises. And we'll get into them one by one to see which one actually ranks number one. And the first one is the West Indies win at the Gabba at the beginning of the year. West Indies hadn't won a test in Australia since I think 97, when Yash was about 7 years old.
That's incorrect. I'm not going to reveal by how much, but it's incorrect.
And Sambit was still editor of Cricinfo, or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
In the making.
Okay. Do you remember, Sambit, the 97 test, and why was this such a huge surprise after
I actually don't
years?
remember the 97 test. I don't remember the test. I usually remember a lot of tests, but I don't remember that test.
Anyway, this win happened for the West Indies after, they were pretty much written off after the first test. I think somebody had called them a hopeless side. And then they win, and they'd win that too with a bowler who was in his first series ever, his second test.
And bowling with a broken foot on the last day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, complete shock, a surprise.
Which is why I'm putting it at number one.
Number one?
Yeah.
Okay, George says number one already for the Gabba test win for West Indies. It was one test win though.
It
was one test win, but if you look at it, no one gave West Indies a hope in hell of
They didn't
beating
even have
Australia.
hope. Literally.
Yeah, they didn't even have hope. And they were playing a day-night test. Australia had never lost a day-night test at the Gabba. I know, India had beaten Australia at the Gabba previously, but still. I know it was only a one-off test, and therefore one of the other, unlikely events is probably going to supersede it. But just for me, the occasion, the emotion, Shamar Joseph running around the Gabba like that, Brian Lara in tears, Roger Harper in tears. It was like a great, great moment.
And Pat come in saying the next day that I was happy.
In a way, it was a good thing that we lost.
Yeah, and remember, this was just after 2023 when India went to West Indies. I remember the conversation then was literally, this is the end of West Indies Test cricket. India had hammered West Indies in West Indies. There was this whole segment we did where we were interviewing even Bishop about whether the West Indies should now split up as a team and be different islands because it's just not working as the West Indies. So that was huge for them to come from that to actually winning at the Gabba.
But not number one.
Okay, not number one.
Yeah. I think it can start over there.
Start at number
finish
one?
Somewhere in the top 3. We'll adjust when it comes.
Okay.
Since the boss says not number one,
okay, so we'll put it at
two.
number 2 to start with, because I think there will be a number 1 that comes in ahead of it. But number 2, the next one we'll discuss is New Zealand winning the Women's T20 World Cup. Yash, why was this a huge surprise?
Because this is a team which has effectively not won anything all year long. New Zealand, barring that edition of the T20 World Cup, I think in 17 white ball internationals they played this year, they won 3. Okay. And then at the World Cup, they they hammered India in the opening game, which set the tone. We had in-house predictions where from India's group, a lot of people still considered Sri Lanka as an outside bet, but no one gave New Zealand any chance.
Maybe this should have been called Australia not winning the World Cup.
The only counter to that is that T20s tend to produce surprise winners. In almost every T20 World Cup, an unfancied team has won. Apart from maybe the last World Cup, you could say that India
It still needed Australia to lose
and they didn't play Australia in the final.
And then
somebody else knocked out Australia.
But once they were playing South Africa in the final, then it's no longer a surprise that South Africa lost. That's not a surprise.
You can, maybe that's the counter to it, that they had West Indies and South Africa, who too are teams who don't have those credentials in the format, in women's cricket. So But I just feel for a team that was so out of sorts. And I mean, it's not just that they were losing, right? They'd lost 10 on the bounce coming into
And
the
the best
World Cup.
players were not really in form, and
Yeah.
then hit form.
Yeah.
In
And
the
if we
World
look at it, we're actually considering that they won the tournament. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
and not one
that's
game.
true.
And when looking at it from the point of when the tournament began,
Yeah.
you know, were they likely to win? I don't think so at all.
So where do they go? Above Gabba Test? Below it?
Probably number 3 or 4.
Number 3 or 4? Should we put it at everyone
I
has
think
it
3
below
for
the
now.
Gabba?
I think that'll move down a little bit, but we can
Yeah,
put
it
it
could
We
move
can put
down
it at number
because,
3
you know,
for now, yeah. The next one is, I think, the one that most of us will have at number 1, which is New Zealand. Not just winning one test in India. I mean, we could have had 3 separate entries for this one to be fair.
Every test was a surprise
Every
of the
test
year.
was a surprise. But 3-0. I mean, who would have ever seen this coming somewhere?
Let's save
no,
time.
no. Just put it at number 1. Not done in 36 years. Not a single test won in 36 years.
1-2 in their entire
lost-
history.
I mean,
Sri
they lost
Lanka.
to Sri Lanka.
I mean,
and
India
they-
hadn't lost a test
Yeah,
series
and
at home in what, 14 years?
Yep.
In 12 years, yes.
12
And
years.
But the
this is a
thing
team
is-
that's actually lost all year.
Yeah. So
They went on to lose a series to England after that, lost to Australia before that.
So New
So
Zealand
there's a-
had one great month in the year.
Yeah,
the men's
both
and the
men
women's.
and
All of it happened in that month.
And
Remove
they
October
went back to losing a series against, fairly miserably to England at home.
Yeah. I mean, and the funny thing is, it wasn't even like one player had an amazing series. Suddenly, everyone just did well. So,
Yeah, what is it, 36 years? We've already given it 36 seconds too many.
Okay,
No.
so number 1. Although this is the only other one that I had as a contender, which is Venki Iyer going for 23.5 crores in the IPL auction. Something that the player himself later admitted to people that he didn't expect.
I mean, if you put it in the scale of surprises that you never saw it coming, in
Yeah.
your wildest imagination, you wouldn't have seen it coming. In that sense, it ranks very high, but you know how the fickleness of auctions and the dynamics of auction and almost the flippancy of auction in some ways. I would put it there somewhere, but
I would have it as number 2.
Yeah,
Just
as a surprise. yes.
That's
If you are
also,
surprised.
it's established
But-
to our viewers that you have some weird fascination with the Ayers in the IPL universe.
No,
So
why?
I get it,
No,
it,
I
but
just-
it can't go that high up.
I mean, it was just such a shock. Nobody predicted that he would be
Yeah.
even among the top 20 highest paid players. Like, no one was even mentioning his name before the auction. Everyone was talking about Pant, Shreyas Iyer, KL
Every
Rahul.
IPL auction throws up a couple of surprises. It's not that
This one was like Pawan Negi level.
Of all the prizes in IPL auction, this is perhaps ranks
Number one.
pretty number 1 maybe. So put it at number 8 to start with.
But number 8.
Then we'll move it up. We'll move
Okay,
it up.
fine. I found it quite surprising, to be honest. But okay.
No. I think all of us found it quite surprising.
Someone
As far as
just
this show goes, Dustin is usually the boss. This first appearance of yours might be your last appearance.
Okay, the next one. This one is Bangladesh. Again, back to Test cricket. Bangladesh, George, beating Pakistan 2-0. Bangladesh actually had not been in great Test form. In fact, the only away series they had ever won before this was 2009 in West Indies, where it was a third string West Indies side. And even at home, they had not been in great form. They had been losing a lot of series.
Plus, they were going through all sorts of turmoil with the political situation back home, unable to train. Shakib was, there was no certainty about whether he would play or not. And massive surprise. And I think the backdrop to this is Pakistan was going through its own turmoil.
That's true.
As well.
And I think that's one of the things which,
Makes
if you're
us
assessing
lower.
where it goes.
Maybe push it to 3 or...
I knew they'll push New Zealand winning the T20 World Cup.
Why I would say that Test surprises in Test cricket is bigger because
You have to win over 5 days.
You need to win all 5 days, sometimes all 10 days to win a series.
I agree.
So
New Zealand had to win over 2 weeks, to be fair. I mean, they won a whole tournament.
Yeah. So
I would put New Zealand ahead of
Within-
this. Just
aside from the context that you guys painted, even within the contest itself, there was the second test where they were 26 for 6.
Yeah, exactly.
And they won that one as well. So yes, I mean, while I want to fight for New Zealand's T20 World Cup, it does sit above
I would put it
for
at
me.
3.
So ahead
I'll put
of
it at
New
3.
Zealand. So okay, we'll move New Zealand to number 4 and Bangladesh. This is maybe a compliment to New Zealand that we didn't find it
So
as
how
big
many
a
more
surprise.
test entries do you have?
We
Can you
have
tell me?
2 more. test
So I'll
entries.
just put New Zealand here.
The next one actually maybe not as big a surprise, which is the Perth Test, India winning. If actually maybe a month before, no one would have said it's that big a surprise, but because India were hammered by New Zealand 3-0 and because they were missing some key players, Rohit Sharma, etc., it was kind of a surprise, but not maybe that big.
And then when they were 180 all out on 150 all out on day one.
Yeah.
From there, yeah, but
I'd put it
I'm
at 7.
still. I would put it at 7.
I think Venki Iyer was more of a surprise than this.
I agree with
But we put it, maybe IPL auction is just not to be considered.
You can, yeah, we could.
No, we
switch
can
them out,
rejig it in the end.
Oh, we'll rejig it now then. We'll get Venki Iyer up there.
I have a feeling eventually Venki Iyer won't be on the
A
board.
tribute
No,
to
I'm
the
gonna
Indian
Keep
test
in mind,
team.
auction content is better than other content. on
Which is why you've kept it.
Cricinfo.
I think Venkaiah might move up a couple of places.
Maybe. Actually, this one was a pretty big surprise because Sri Lanka winning the Oval Test. People were already kind of writing the obituary
Yeah,
of
but
Sri
England
Lanka.
always lose a test
Thing
at
is,
home.
England lose a test, and the kind of cricket they play, they will always lose the
I'm
odd
just going to
test.
say, keep that outside the top 8 already. I
Outside
have
the
enough
top
faith
8?
in the wildcard
Yeah.
picks, they'll be bigger than that one.
This was a pretty big surprise. I think we should have got Fernando to call in.
It was, but England always drop
Yeah.
a test in the summer.
And in Australia, Sri Lanka have won in England before.
So we're moving Venki Iyer up to 6.
Wow.
And is this one bigger than the Perth Test or Perth Test was
Not
a
for
bigger
me.
surprise? Okay.
Perth or Sri Lanka.
I think it's.
This is fine?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
I thought
Perth
we
Test
were
bigger.
leaving it outside the first eight.
That's what
we
I
do
wanted
that
to
once the wildcards come in. We have wildcards as usual. And then the last one is Afghanistan reaching the semi-final of the T20 World Cup. They beat New Zealand in the group stage in a tough group. And then, of course, in the Super 8, beat Australia.
And Bangladesh.
Provided some massive entertainment. One of the moments of the year was Gulbadin
Exactly.
just getting shot by an invisible rubber bullet and falling to the floor.
I mean, theirs was a sensational story.
So if you
Sensational
tell me
story,
like
but you'd
once,
expect Afghanistan to do
I don't
well
think
in
you
the
could have
T20
expected
World
it.
no, I think
because
at the start of the tournament,
Yes.
no one thought of it. But once the
Yes.
conditions were what they were,
Yeah.
then it wasn't that big
and
a
even
surprise.
after that, I remember distinctly the conversations at the start of the Super 8s that yes, this could now be tricky.
Yeah.
But it's not like anyone actually said that they are backing Afghanistan to go ahead of Australia. For them to win that game against Australia, then win the game against Bangladesh, which is probably the
Yeah.
game of the year.
And the New Zealand have never lost to
Correct. New Zealand don't lose to any
much
of the
lower ranked team.
non-top
Yeah,
6 teams.
Exactly.
And as good as Afghanistan are in T20 cricket, they had never beaten either Australia, England, India, like these really top ranked sides. They had not beaten one of them in a T20.
them beating Australia was the big.
Yeah,
big
that was a big surprise, yeah.
but I think number 5 would be just right.
Ahead of Venki Iyer, because at least it's cricket. It's not just auction. Okay, we'll do wildcards now. This ranking looks fairly good. George, you want to start us off with your wild?
Yeah, I've gone for something like kind of left field. It's like not really event, so to speak, but it's South Africa currently leading the World Test Championship table because they started the year by snubbing the World Test Championship and sending a 4th string side to New Zealand. And it appeared like they didn't really, care so much about it. And the year started like that, and it's ending with them likely to
More
become the
because of
first
other
team.
teams messing up.
That-
really.
Likely
that
to
also
be the
tells you-
first
that
team in the
also tell
final.
you- That also tells
Yeah.
you the sort of how the draw works, in the sense that
Yeah.
they've had a relatively easy
Very
ride
easy, yeah.
at home.
They have, yes,
Against them,
yeah.
played too many tough
They haven't
teams.
really
But I
won
mean,
any big tests.
To be
to
fair,
us.
it's not like New Zealand was supposed to be a tough assignment for India at home.
True.
The World Test Championship
yeah.
schedule works in a fairly uniform manner that way.
South Africa basically benefited from number 1.
Yeah.
Correct.
So they can join that because
But I mean,
that's why they're where they are.
But I love the phrasing of this argument that a team which started the year wanting to snub the WTC is now the only team guaranteed to be in the WTC final effectively.
But does it get in the top 8 or everyone
yeah.
says just
I
outside?
don't think so.
No, I think it replaces Sri Lanka in.
Really replaces the Oval Test? Okay, so we'll put it in at number 8 if everyone says so. Mr. Sambit Bal does not have a sticker for his wildcard, but
Because
he'll
I
just
was
say
a last-minute entry.
Last-minute entry.
Surprise entry.
But he can just say what it is, and if it gets in the top 8, then somebody will pen it in.
To me, US in the
Yeah,
2020
that was a
World
big
Cup,
surprise.
they were almost at one point a contender to make it to the semi-final. The contender.
USA.
So
Not to make it to the
Made
semi-final.
it to the semis.
They
No,
would have
not
made
once
the
the contender to make it to the Super 8.
Super
but
8,
they
sorry,
beat- but
Super 8.
which they did.
Sorry.
They did. They beat
did.
Canada and then they beat Pakistan, of course, in the Super
then
Over.
they lost.
And they had India 30 for 3 at one stage, which was like
I mean-
semi-interesting, the match.
A lot of Pakistan have had this history of getting upset by a lot of unfancy teams, but
No,
But
and
still,
to be fair, even USA
beating-
Canada was actually
yeah.
a surprise.
Yeah.
I mean, Canada were the favourites in that game, and USA won that.
I mean,
And then to
yeah,
beat
but
Pakistan
even
was a
I'll
pretty
not
big
fight
deal.
for that to be in the top 8.
Okay.
I'll
So
just-
we
I actually feel USA beating Pakistan
Is a pretty big
is a
surprise.
top 8.
But where?
like ahead of South Africa
But
getting
Pakistan
into the...
also do this.
Sorry?
Pakistan also do this, as in they drop.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but just the stories that came out of that surprise, like people who had been playing in India and then gone there as engineers and stuff, that was
Yeah,
definitely one of the
Or
stories of
Nitish
the
Kumar,
year.
who had switched sides, helping
Yeah.
USA win the game. So, I mean, there's a lot to that game.
What about then? See, then India winning at Perth is okay, as in.
So we shift India winning at Perth out. I think this was, maybe because it's USA, but then we've got to write it in. So Yash, maybe you can
And,
write USA there, or we'll wait till we get the other wild card.
Yes, you have now 4 T20 entries in there already.
So Yash
Yeah,
will do.
two test matches have been knocked out.
Yeah, Yash will do his wild card next.
You can-
We'll see. This is also
So what,
pretty
are you
big.
just writing USA there?
After all the arguments I've had, I have a test match result of my own.
I'll look at the cop out.
Because Pakistan, after losing to England in a game where they conceded 800 plus, on the back of having changed, I think, 15 coaches and 40 chief selectors.
And dropping their best fast bowlers.
And dropping their fast bowlers and deciding to change the pitches. They changed everything. They had lost everything before that. They changed everything in the span of a week. And then they won the next 2 tests.
Just give it to Alim Dar.
So,
Just give it to Alim Dar.
as long as he stays in the job.
I have stories which I can't narrate on this show, but just give it to Alim Dar.
I actually
So-
thought this was a pretty huge surprise. Everyone was talking about Pakistan cricket being in the doldrums after they lost to Bangladesh, then got absolutely hammered in that first test.
Yeah.
This was pretty big for me, actually. So anyone has this in the top 8, I actually think it's a decent pick for number 8 because it's a series win, not just a single
But
test.
then you're removing USA.
They're
the
removing
invisible
USA. Yes.
You
USA,
could put it
South
at
Africa.
7 then, if you want
Let's
to.
make it top 10 then.
And then drop the South Africa one, maybe. Just because South Africa didn't really earn this.
Yeah,
on
I
their
want
own.
to put South Africa there.
Yeah, so maybe put the Pakistan one there. We'll keep USA number 8. And then I have a contender for number 1. Because which team, apart from South Africa, which team is the most trolled team for continuously losing and never winning anything?
RCB.
Yes, and this year, RCB won a title.
What?
The WPL. The RCB won something. It may not have been in the IPL, but after last WPL, when RCB performed really poorly, it looked like that RCB, the jinx was on the women's team as well. And then RCB Bangalore finally had something to
This is
celebrate.
Dustin being Dustin,
This
hipster.
is number 1. Come on.
This is number 11.
RCB winning something.
Yeah, but-
no?
No.
I know that the women's team is a good team and that it's not cricket-wise that big a surprise,
Yeah.
but it's just that it's RCB. No?
Yes, if we
This-
can
you
ignore
can-
the cricket, I'll put it on the
You
list.
can put it in Instagram, not in Cricinfo.
So it doesn't go anywhere. So we have USA, the
So are we
invisible
convinced
USA.
USA at 8 ahead of all of these 4?
It was a pretty big surprise.
It is
Yeah.
a pretty big surprise. Yeah, you just need to create a sticker for it now.
Yeah.
So 4 test entries and 4 T20 entries.
Yeah,
And,
that's actually many more T20 entries than I thought.
and the most horrible year for ODIs ever in history, 2024.
But tests have been thrown the most number of surprises this year. This has been a crazy year in test cricket.
Yeah. So anyway, let us know in the comments which are the surprising events that we might have missed out. And that's this episode of The Lineup.